And then we'll talk a little bit about it. I'll tell you what it is. I hope you can. This is Dune. Dune. Nice. Good. I'm glad some of you know what it is. Here, I'm gonna start from the park position.
Okay.
We're gonna start from fully parked and then do a full takeoff sequence here. Are you ready? So we're gonna close up the forward hatches, deploy the wings for flight. Oh, come on, wings. And then we're gonna start the engines. And then you retract the landing gear and then you're off to the races. And it's swooping all around. And then my favorite part, if you remember in the movie, they go out and they're just kind of hovering around, like inspecting the scene. And then they need to go in and rescue the workers on the spice harvester. So Leto goes, he just pulls in the wings and like goes into this dive. And they just fall in, and then like right as they come to the ground, he just goes, "Oh, let's see, come on," and comes back out of it. That part to me was just like, okay, this is the coolest ornithopter ever. And then also like when they'll like swoop up in, and they do this like, I don't even know if it's really possible, but they like swoop up in like this and then drop down and land. What a great movie. We should watch it. But in the model, in the cockpit, we only really have space for two characters just because of the nature of the build. So we have this little, I don't know, sled, whatever you call it, that you can take out, because otherwise it basically becomes impossible to get anyone in there. So you can put your characters on this, and then you can slide them in there, and then close it up. And then here on the ramp, there's space to put some characters, but there's no space inside when it folds up. So you just have to imagine
most of the space inside is for the amazing moving features, right?
It's the thing is, the inside is actually quite. So we have this feathering function where the wings can open and close with this lever here, and then we have this flapping function. Inside here is actually quite a lot of air. The issue is not that like. I don't know how to explain it. It's not that there's so much mechanism built up there. It's just that there's so much space needed for it to move between the two modes. Yeah. Especially the feathering. Like there's two big levers in there that need to be able to go like almost, I think they move each two modules in as they go through their motion. So there needed to be a lot of empty space for that movement. Because you can, like, even though like in flying mode they're here, and in open mode they're here. It's like in either mode there's a lot of empty space, but we need to go through that space to get to the other one, so we can't put anything there. Mm-hmm.
And it's all new piece for the blade, right?
Yeah. So Joel is the element designer for the two new elements we made for this. So he designed the blade and.
Yes, and I think
we can pop those off, and you can.
Yes, story of the blade is somewhat story of the scale of the Ornithopter, because essentially we don't normally do parts that are that long.
Yeah.
They hard to control in the molds. It's like, how do you prevent it from, from warping, and all these things, and so. And so we have connectors, for example, on one side, but if we had it on the other side, it would be even harder to make sure that this is in the right place, so you can bridge it with bricks and everything. But the start of this, the placeholder was a very similar, a bit shorter blade that we have on the Technique helicopters that Mike was using, and then we said, okay, but this looks too short still. By the references that we got from the IP partners and everything, it's long. So we went to the engineers, how long can we get it? And eventually we came down to 40 modules, which is like 32 centimeters. And that sort of became also the scale, accordingly the scale of the entire craft, essentially. I don't know much about this apart from, as in like much more interesting details apart from, we had to close the gap that the original blades have in the reference, so it won't break, but also it kind of makes it a little bit I think more useful for other builds in the future, hopefully as swords, feathers, whatever. It's going to be used hopefully by the fans, hopefully by our model designers for future models. Who knows? But I think it has potential to exist longer than this, than the set, or the context of the set. And Mike, anything you want to add on that specifically?
No.
And the second new part that we have is the cockpit, the front piece. I'm scared every time I want to
Do it
take
like
it out.
sideways. Go sideways
Yeah.
with it.
With the
Yeah, like twisting that
with
way.
the cutouts.
Yeah.
Interesting, yes.
So it can actually like adapt to studs, hey?
Yeah.
Yes. So what we've been seeing with the development of this one is that it has been developing alongside the entire model. The model has been changing in scales and changing in angles of the front and everything. And so I had like a very close collaboration with Mike to get it to the right size. So we had many versions of those, and to get it to the right size and angles to fit the front of this vehicle, but also to keep these angles. There's a bunch of angles and footprints and everything around this element that are very Lego core DNA angle plates. It started off really with a bunch of angle plates there, and we understood that was the preferred footprint, and we then built it up with there. I mean, how many times the angles are changing according to the reference we got, and then putting those points on the Lego grid.
It was nearly the final version where this and this were one angled surface, like this. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
It's like it didn't have this flat section here. It just went up at a steeper angle. And
until like the last week.
Yeah, until like the very last week of development, and then we were showing it to this guy Patrice, who's the designer of the actual Ornithopter models in the movie, and he was like, "Yeah, the cockpit in the front is not right."
Yeah.
And he was like talking about the whole thing, and we were just like, "Oh, that's a really late comment to be talking about the whole thing," or at least we thought he was. But then we realized like the issue was actually just the exact side profile of the front part. And so Joel did like, I don't know, 6 or 7, like all of a sudden we just went into like super go mode and made 6 or 7 different versions of like making this flat,
there was
making
even
it longer.
7 versions of that.
Yes. Yeah, we did a whole bunch of
How
versions
long
of that.
is the back when it gets flat?
And then it's also like
where do we put the inlet of where the engineers
in this rush, we're not just like, we can't just turn off our brains and be like, whatever Patrice wants, we do. Like, we say, we need to make Patrice happy, but we still need to follow all of our rules and all of our guidelines on how we make elements, not only for how it works within the Lego family of building, but also what can we actually produce in our factories? Like, how does it fit into the mold to all this stuff? So you had like, and normally at that stage in an element development, we want to be talking about like, what do you think should be the radius on this transition here? Not, we want to change the whole
or
like profile
finish.
of the shape, or what should be the surface finish on this inside bit here? That's the kind of details that we want to be discussing at that point. But I was like, Joel, I think we gotta mix the whole thing up a little bit here. So
we did.
That's one of the things I really appreciate working with Joel, is like he's always ready to go that extra, like do that extra one loop. We did this similar thing we did the Porsche 911 together a few years ago.
We also changed like 2 weeks before.
We're also like in the last week of development, and that's when we got this idea to do. That car can either be built as a regular 911 or as a turbo 911 that has a wider back axle. And like in the element design needs to get locked down quite a bit earlier than the model design needs to get locked down. But in like the very last days of the element development, we had this plan. What we're gonna make?
We were gonna make a wheel arch.
We're gonna make like a Speed Champions wheel arch, a big Speed Champions wheel arch, so like 8 modules long. And then I was just like, wait a minute. I was on a call with Porsche, and they were like, it would be so awesome if you could make the turbo and the regular 911. And I was just like, there's no way I can do that because I'm building the wheel arch in like this. Like I can't just pull that out. That's not how Lego bricks work. And then something in my head just clicked. I was like, wait a minute. If the wheel arch is on sideways, then I can just take it on or off. Yeah. And I think that was on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, it was definitely.
And I called you and I was just like, we have work to do Monday morning.
Yeah.
And I think I just left it at that.
We were also lucky to have engineers that were agreeable as well.
Yeah.
That were flexible enough to be changing complete shape, not even changing two surfaces for the Porsche. We changed the entire concept.
Yeah, from this big wheel arch piece to a 5 by 5 quarter
kind of
circle piece.
Which was like, much healthier for Lego. Like for the system, for the longevity of the element.
But that's how we work sometimes.
Yeah.
We have 8 figures. I mean, when we're very first starting, just like insect flapping function, see what we could do, and then figure out could we make something that would feather.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until like quite a bit later on in the process where we were like, we can like make this vehicle. How big will it be? Somewhere down the line, we started to realize like, okay, we could make a minifigure sized version of this, and it would be big enough that it'll be an impressive model. But not too big that we can't achieve it. So then the minifigures just started to make sense. And so originally we were like, well, we want to have Duke Leto, we want to have Paul, and then we want to have Gurney, so we can do this scene on the back of the Ornithopter when they like pick him up just before the worm comes. So that was the original 3. We're like, we need these. Then we thought, okay, let's include Dr. Kynes, because she's there in the cockpit. So then we have like our 2 guys in the cockpit and our 2 guys on the back, and then they were all just in the still suits. And we were just like, yeah, that's kind of boring. They don't really contrast that great to the vehicle. And it was also then just like one torso, one new torso, one new leg thing. It doesn't really represent the Dune universe that well. I mean, the still suit is a big part of it, but like you need so much more. So then we thought, what if instead of just focusing on that one scene, we do both the scene where they arrive on Arrakis and then fly the Ornithopters from the airfield to the palace, and also the scene, that rescue scene. So then we kept Dr. Kynes and Leto in their still suits, and then we put them into their like arrival outfits, and then we thought, okay, let's add Jessica in her little dress. We get some more color, and then from there, actually, Legendary was like, we really want to include Jason Momoa's character Duncan Idaho and Zendaya's character Chani.
Yeah.
Just because they're like fan favorites and everyone knows them. So then we were like, all right, she makes sense in a still suit. That's easy. And here we picked Duncan Idaho and his like that during the ambush, the Harkonnen ambush, where he like gets up in the night and just starts running around chopping up Harkonnens. Yeah. And then the Baron was, I think very early on we were just like, we got to include the Baron. It doesn't make any sense. We don't know how we're gonna do it, but we gotta include the Baron. Like we need the bad guy. And we're never like, what scene in that movie where the Baron is there would ever be an appropriate Lego product? There's nothing, right? There's nothing like, oh yeah, we could do that scene where he's having the feast and kills Duke Leto. Like we're not doing that. We're not doing the scene with the creepy spider pet thing. So we thought like, let's just throw him in. And we worked quite closely with Legendary Pictures to make this. We were working with the main production designer, Patrice, from he was a production designer for Dune 1 and was working on Dune 2 as we were making this. And then with some of the film's producers as well. And they were like, don't include the Baron. And then we sent them our first pictures. And the next call we had, they're like, we got to be honest. Everyone we showed the Baron to was just like, yeah, we need the Baron. So he snuck his way in. He's so evil.